Hello, listeners, and welcome to Bite-Sized Tales, the audio flash fiction podcast. In this week's story, a malfunctioning piece of technology sends our protagonist down memory lane, with all the bumps that might come along with that. Memories, written and read by Wayne Cole. As I stepped out the front door of my childhood home for the last time, the memories overwhelmed me. I don't mean that in some esoteric way either. Something in my cortical implant malfunctioned at that exact moment, flooding me with replays of memories, not one at a time, but all at once. A lifetime of memories that some unknowable algorithm determined were worth permanently saving without any input from me on relevance. I had no frame of reference for a mental assault by a device that had been part of me since I was 2 years old. Some parents waited until just before school when they were required, but mine had wanted me to have time for adjustment. All my senses were assaulted by conflicting stimuli. I experienced being 3 and running into the living room on Christmas morning to see what gifts were waiting. The flashing lights on the Christmas tree drew my attention. I can smell bacon cooking in the kitchen from my bed years later. I hear myself screaming at my father as a teenager angry at the world. I taste my high school girlfriend's breath mint as we kiss. Finally, I feel how frail my elderly mother's arms are as I try to help her up from a fall. The sense of helplessness and anger at the aging process threaten to break me. Each sense is replaced by another as quickly as it hits me in a torrent. My head felt like it was going to burst open. The human brain is not meant to handle simultaneous memories. It felt like a tidal wave crashing onto my mind, leaving me gasping for mental air. I tried to focus on individual moments to slow the feedback. I focused on my first dog and how he showed me that animals didn't have to be scary. He was at the same time young and hyper and old and infirmed. Each memory felt like a double-edged blade, cutting me deeply as I grasped to keep them, but had to acknowledge that those moments are past. Each moment that I could pull strength from was followed by another pain as I lost anything I tried to hold on to. Physical pain cuts through the other sensations. I had collapsed to the floor, hitting hard, without any way to lessen the impact. Normally I avoid pain, but this time I yearned for it. It was like a lifeline, anchoring me to the present and what was real. I tried to feel as much as I could because it gave me mental footing to exist in the moment instead of the past. Pain was once again my companion, one that I embraced like a lover. I let the pain ground me as I rode out the mental attack. When the memories finally faded, I took inventory of my state. I was curled up on the floor with tears filling my eyes. My legs were shaky and lacked enough strength to even stand up. Blood ran down the side of my face, mixing in with my tears. My head had busted open when it hit the floor. The world still felt like it was spinning, and I couldn't grasp a sense of balance. A voice deep down inside me screamed to get up and move, but my body just wouldn't respond. I wasn't even sure what was real at that moment. Some unknown amount of time passed before I could finally sit up and compose myself. The first thought that came to mind was a question. Should I clean up the blood or just leave it for the person buying the house to deal with? The second thought was to wonder if there was something wrong with me, that I would be more concerned about a mess than my own physical well-being. If my cortical implant had failed in a more precarious moment, like when I was on the stairs, I could have died. Since I didn't fully understand the device in my own head, I didn't know if it was really okay now or if this could happen again. I looked around the room again, thinking about all the memories I had just experienced. Why were these the ones that the algorithm deemed important enough for permanent storage? What about all the simpler moments, just spending time with my family or relaxing with a good book? The implant had chosen to remember those moments, but some of them I would have rather forgotten. In time, you either focus on the good memories or the bad, and years blend together, being shaded by those memories. I wanted the good, but each good memory was fleeting and something that would soon pass. I knew the painful ones passed as well, but seeing them right after the good had poisoned my memories of them. I resented my implant for this. As soon as the strength returned to me, I forced myself to my feet. It was still difficult to focus, but I was going into fight or flight mode. There was nothing there to fight, so I needed to put some distance between myself and that experience. I finally finished what I had been trying to do and stepped out the front door, pulling it shut behind me. As much as I needed to, taking those steps still felt like I was leaving a part of myself behind. The more innocent child who I had just glimpsed in those memories. The struggling adult trying to come to grips with parents who had always been sources of strength, suddenly having to rely on others. I struggled to my car and got in, staring out the front windshield at the house. So much of my life had occurred in that house, but I had moved on decades ago. It was not my home anymore, but the thought of never seeing it again was hard to accept. It was my parents' home, but they didn't live there anymore. In a few days, someone else would own it. They wouldn't know about the good times or the bad, but they'd be making their own memories. Home, I said to my car's AI. I'd named my car after a car from a TV show I watched with my parents as a kid. I remembered all of those moments, but I couldn't even remember a name that had stuck with me into adulthood long enough for me to name my car. I remembered having a talking battery-powered version of the car and driving it around the very driveway I was currently sitting in. Why didn't I have any images of it in my trip down memory lane? Because you can't choose what memories get saved. You just live with the ones you have. I felt betrayed by something that was supposed to make my life easier. As my car backed out of the driveway, I took my last look at the house. With it in my rearview mirror, I opened up the browser in the car and logged into my healthcare page. I needed to make an appointment to have the implant looked at. In that moment, I didn't trust using it to look anything up. I didn't want the implant doing anything at all other than the basic authentications needed to start my car and unlock my door when I got home. If I could have turned it off in that moment, I would have. But things in your head cannot be turned off. You just have to live with them. And now a note from our author. This story was hard. I lost my father in November, and my mother recently moved into an assisted living place. I went through the process of selling my childhood home that they lived in for 52 years. In a very real way, the memories did hit me when I left for the last time, and that's what inspired this story. A lifetime of struggling with depression and with the things that you can't control in your own mind also inspired this story. Sometimes it's easier to assign the things you struggle with to objects to explore in a science fiction story. Obviously, the implant is just a stand-in for the human brain and how sometimes we feel helpless by the things it does. This story was a bit of self-therapy, and I want to thank you for joining me in it. This chapter of Bite-Sized Tales has been brought to you under a Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives 4.0 International License. Intro and outro music is Fantasy Motion by Alexander Nakarada, provided under a Creative Commons 4.0 license. If you enjoyed what you heard today, we would greatly appreciate reviews and recommendations to your friends. Finally, for more information about our authors, please visit bitesizedtales.com. We look forward to reading to you next time.